what advice would you give to those listeners, maybe in their 20s, trying to figure, I wanted to get into sales, entrepreneurship, but I'm just not quite sure what I want to do?
Well, if you want to get into sales or entrepreneurship, or is it advice in general?
Advice in general for those. Yeah, I always get those.
I wish I would have started a lot younger, choosing a career that brought me happiness. I also want to say, with a big asterisk, I do think that unless you have college paid for, it scares the bejesus out of me when I see someone spending $200,000 getting a degree to be an English teacher or something, because like it just, in my opinion, it's just way too much to spend on something like it's too much money to spend on just about anything at this point.
The Competitive Edge Podcast, where champions aren't just born, they're made. Hosted by Brian Covey, former pro athlete turned high-performance executive and coach who's mastered the art of staying at the top of the game. He'll bring you trailblazers, industry leaders, and game changers, from achieving peak performance to building an unstoppable mindset. The Competitive Edge Podcast is your ultimate guide to rise. So ask yourself, are you ready to find your edge?
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So today we have a fellow Brand Builders guest. So I'm so excited. Matt Gerlach is in town for the Brand Builders event, so we grabbed him. We wanted him to come in the studio and share with us. So if you're someone that's ever had self-doubt, you've ever wondered about your worth, whether it was you or someone else that made you feel that you weren't worthy or you weren't actually at the level that you thought you should be at, and you've struggled with these issues that, quite honestly, we all have. And it's that imposter syndrome, some of us coin it as. I look at it as a former athlete. There were times that I wondered, was I good enough to be on that team? Good enough to be there? Good enough for that? And a lot of that, guys, we want to work through and battle through with you today and share with you some of the proven practices that Matt coaches high-level entrepreneurs. His new podcast just launched. And then he also is someone that I think you're going to find his story is going to inspire you. But we're also going to equip you with the tools. I always say, we can inspire you all day, but we want to equip you with the tools and resources to help you move forward in your journey. So without further ado, we're going to welcome Matt to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Dude, how cool is this? So in Nashville, you're here for the Brand Builders event tomorrow and Friday, which is awesome. We love, shout out to Rory and AJ and all the BBG crew. Let's start there, because I think a lot of people know Rory. They've probably seen him. He's been a guest on our show and all that, in the connection with Brand Builders. So you're in town for that.
Yep.
How did you originally get connected with them?
I found them through probably an Amy Porterfield or Jenna Kutcher podcast. And it's funny, it was the most money I'd ever laid out for something. And now I spend that kind of money consistently on my personal growth. But I couldn't be happier with it. It's really changed my life.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about some of that today. Yeah. And so let's dive into it. You've been with BBG, you said about 18 months, and you've started working. Book, your podcast just launched recently. Yeah. And so you have all these things going on building your brand, which I'm curious about. But before we get into it, let's take people back. Let's learn a little bit about Matt's story and who you are, people that may not know you yet, a little bit about your journey and just insight into how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sounds good. So my story is, it's very unexpected. I'm 41 years old. About 8 years ago, I was living in Manhattan in New York, and I'd always been a top performer. I've been in sales my whole career, selling not very exciting things. I started selling metal for construction, machining, fabrication. I don't really think anyone, I'm as a child, dreams to be a metal salesperson. And I did that. I did very well at it. It was very, very, very hard, much more difficult than any job I've had since. Just completely negotiable. Every sale was a negotiation. Yeah. High volume, 100 orders a day type thing. And 2008 came, the economy hit us pretty poorly. And I moved to New York and wound up in baby products.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was
totally different lane.
Totally different. And, I think that was a really good lesson to see that. You hear so many people say, well, I can't change careers. And albeit I was in my late 20s, but still I had almost half a decade of success and knowledge in an area. I knew everything about metal. And I completely transitioned to baby products, which was wholesale. So it was a totally different ballgame. Trade shows I'd never been to. It was lovely. Like at that time, 2010, baby products were kind of like the new thing. It was a very underdeveloped category. And actually, I would say that a lot of the innovation came from New York, where people who were very rich still lived in relatively small apartments and didn't want to look at ugly baby products anymore. They wanted something more design friendly that matched their living room better. So I was a big part of that movement. I mean, it was, I saw 3 companies from almost zero to over $100 million in revenue.
Wow.
It was a very exciting time. We had a lot of fun. Just constantly celebrating. And my first job was for a company named Aiden and Ane. They make baby swaddle blankets. It was quite the story. A woman, she had kids of her own. She lived in Australia and she couldn't find this product that she had grown up with in America and brought these muslin swaddling blankets to America. I was a big part of this, helped create a category, and it was just so much fun. And the competition's completely changed this game, and people have less kids now, and cost of living is different now, so people aren't investing in their baby products the way they once were.
Oh, like the baby, I look at the chains and some of those that have gone out of business, and then you can find things online. You got boutiques and things, and like that always changed. What's one of the lessons you learn? I mean, selling metal to selling baby products, totally different world, but it sounds like you've learned some things within that sales entrepreneurial lane, probably working there.
If you can sell something, you can sell anything. I mean, sales it's not really, I think it's very, very, very transferable. I mean, what would you say? Would you?
Oh, 1,000%. We always teach, like, if you can learn sales, it is one of the greatest skills ever. And as I said, I've been married 22 years. It's like there's a selling to you, the whole relationship and what you do. And there's a product or service and manufacturing, baby toys, mortgage. It's all a service and product.
And the more that, I love real estate as well. So, selling something you love makes it even easier. But I sold metal, and no one really has an affinity towards metal. So if I could do that and do well at it, the closer I get to selling something that I actually love and believe in and use, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
I really learned entrepreneurship. I had no idea that I was landing in this amazing entrepreneurship battlefield that I landed in when I moved to Manhattan. But I learned how to be an entrepreneur. I learned on other people's dimes. I got to see a lot of mistakes. Millions and millions of dollars of mistakes were made, and I don't say that laughingly. I say it like it was just like how fortunate I felt to not have to spend my own money learning all of that. Yeah. But I got so much experience in entrepreneurship, and I worked, and more impressively, the 3 big companies I worked for them at different stages of the companies. So I got to see what it was like to grow a company from 0 to 40 million, then 40 to 80, and then one was already above 100 million when I came on board.
So you got to see all the stages.
Yeah, and there's challenges of all kinds, and I really learned so much more than I learned in college. That's for sure.
Okay, so let's give some advice, because we do have some 20-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe early 30s. What advice, if you were to go back and tell the Matt then those things, because you talked about changing and adapting and moving, like if you can sell, you can sell. What advice would you give to those listeners, maybe in their 20s, trying to figure, I want to get into sales, entrepreneurship, but I'm just not quite sure what I want to do.
Well, if you want to get into sales or entrepreneurship, or is it advice in general?
Advice in general for those. Yeah, I always get those.
I wish I would have started a lot younger, choosing a career that brought me happiness. I also want to say, with a big asterisk, I do think that unless you have college paid for, it scares the bejesus out of me when I see someone spending $200,000 getting a degree to be an English teacher or something, because it just, in my opinion, it's just way too much to spend on something like it's too much money to spend on just about anything at this point, unless you have somebody helping you. I'm very fortunate. I graduated college with $30,000 in loans, which was totally manageable.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm 41 now, and I wish I would have. I have no regrets. I would say this is my journey, but I would say that the past 20 years would have been easier, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but follow your dream. That's what I've spent the past 10 years learning to follow. I never knew that the things that I had interest could make me wealthy, could make me afford me the life that I wanted.
Yeah.
And the more that I learn and observe, there's millions of people out there that are doing things and getting paid way more money than I do for things that don't feel like work.
Yeah.
And I wish that I would have pursued that sooner.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. We were at a conference last week and people were talking about that, and there were these niches that I heard about, from like insurance billing to people that love to fish, and they had like, you know, fishing products to firearms and all that stuff. Like, none of those really get me excited, but I had to take a step back and go, but if that's what they love and they've been able to create a business model to serve their niche that's there and they love it, it doesn't feel like the work and the grind that I know we were talking about. We both got friends that they spend 14 hours or so a day, for example, maybe 6-7 days a week, and they have no life.
Yeah.
And they enter this world of burnout, which you talk about quite a bit. And it's one of the things that stuck out to me is, you know, how real it is. And it was said last week, I love this, was cancel culture, which we heard is kind of a buzzword. And I want to get your take on this. Is one of the speakers shared, and this hit me, is the biggest threat we've actually had over the last few years was canceling ourselves and our dreams.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, is that a trend that we've only seen in the past couple of years? I think that forever people have been telling themselves that what they want out of their life is not possible. I mean, is it something just recently that's been... I
think people have gotten more vocal about it. And I wonder if it's this, they see other people going out and living their dreams. And maybe it's guys like us, let's just say that in our 40s, right? That we finally realize, oh, that's what we really want to do and we can go do it.
I feel a little bit opinionated about this, because I think that right now we're seeing a huge shift in the economics of living, where like you used to be able to go to school and get and just work hard and do everything right. And being happy was a little bit less important because you were happy in your off time. You still got a home. You still had a backyard. Now, like, you could be like graduating from Harvard and working very smartly and very strategically and still not be able to even afford rent in your apartment in a nice city. I mean, I think this is the whole thing about the next generation now, and that people want to find fulfillment outside of work because work is not fulfilling enough anymore. It's not providing us enough to live our lives the way that we used to be able to. So.
I totally agree. I'm glad you said this, because people don't talk about this very often, right? And I look back, even my early days of corporate America was very much, you went for the paycheck, and you graduated college and you expected, and I played soccer in college. So similarly, like, I didn't leave a student loan debt, thank goodness, but you were expected to get a job and you're able to go do it, and you could afford a home. And I remember, like, our first home, Matt, literally 2002, $149,000. The mortgage was like $1,000.
Yeah.
Rent was comparable. I don't know if you've watched the show. Ryan Serhant has his new Netflix show.
I have not seen that show, actually.
So you made me think about when you said Manhattan. I'm watching last night, and literally my wife and Nicole and I look at each other. One of the things that came through, they said they were showing someone an apartment, $8,000 a month.
I think that's normal rent in New York now. I mean, it was I'm in a 2-bedroom, I hope.
Oh, it's small, yeah.
Okay.
2
bedrooms not that small in New York. A lot of people are paying $8,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment now. Sorry to cut you off, but
this perspective though adds to what's happening.
It's insane. And I do think, like, living in New York, I don't know exactly how it is now, but I felt that the potential for earning was night and day out there. When I live in New York, now living in LA, I don't know many people that make what I hear, people making in New York, but still, $8,000 a month in rent. That's, that's almost $100,000 a year. So before taxes, so $200,000 of salary is going towards, your rent, so you'd have to make, $300,000-$400,000 to be able to afford $8,000 a month in rent.
It's wild.
And it's insane. And I mean, and to your point, this is actually what boggles my mind. I read the New York Times, and I think it's on Sundays. It'll say like what you get for X amount of dollars, and it will give 3 different locations in the United States. And it's been about 4 months, and I don't know if I missed it a little bit before, but my jaw drops. It's like what you get for $1.5 million in these places that used to be like $400,000 or $300,000 for a home. And I mean, a few years ago, you could buy a home for $200,000 somewhere. It might not be very nice. I don't think you can live anywhere for $200,000 anymore.
Not very well. You'd be such in the outskirts, just Nashville, and you're probably in a not even a starter home. You wouldn't even call it that anymore.
I mean,
like you might be in a trailer that you had to get land and rent, but yeah, it's astonishing to see how that has happened. We had a conversation this morning alone. I don't know if you've seen these stats, but the difference between net worth of a homeowner and a renter. Mm-hmm. Have you seen these?
No, I haven't.
So the latest stat is the average renter, right, just across the United States, has a net worth of around $11,000.
Okay.
So take their assets, obviously minus liabilities. Wow. This is the average of what they have, $11,000.
Wow.
The average homeowner, regardless of the size of home, right, this is just the average, is just shy of $400,000.
Wow.
The gap is widening.
What do you think about, I mean, so I own my home. I've owned my home for quite some time, and I've always been taught to buy a home. But like, I follow the news, I follow politics, and I'm in economics pretty well. And they're saying a lot more now, like buying a home isn't necessarily recommended for everybody now. And they're saying that putting your money in the stock market makes more sense. And by my calculations, I'm not disagreeing with that. I've been kind of surprised and like, seeing that where 5 years ago I would have said everyone's crazy for not buying a home that can buy a home. And now it's like if you chose to rent and put your money in the stock market, there's an argument for that now. What do you think about that?
So I'm seeing this trend where if you're not married and you don't have kids and like the dog and you need the house, right? Mm-hmm. You actually need it because you've got enough rooms that are there. We're seeing people, what I would do if I was younger again, which is the generation I think like 35 and below, they're being challenged the most. If they are able to cohabitate, for example, there's a lot of homes that have like a ADU unit that's separate, or there are better, and you could set it up to where you could rent it with 2 or 3 other people. Wouldn't it be interesting? And I've seen this actually happening in Nashville where people have gotten together and they buy that home collectively together, and then they're all building that, right? So if it's a $5,000 a month mortgage, but I can only afford, let's say $1,500. Well, if you bring 3 people in, you're getting pretty close to that, right? To that number. I think we're going to see more trends like that. And the people that aren't married, again, don't have to worry about the kids and that kind of situation and safety. I think we're going to see more of that because what I know about rent is rent will continually go up. Mm-hmm. Rent is not getting cheaper for most people and where they want to live and what they want to do. For most, what I would say is they actually need to meet with that professional like what we offer and go through and create a plan. I think it can be both. I think you can invest in the market and you can purchase a home. Now, what does that home look like? It might be further out than you thought. Mm-hmm. It might be different than you thought. But there's a lot of tools out there, like even buy downs we're using today to combat the higher interest rates. Mm-hmm. And there are sellers we're seeing today that are willing to hold seller financing.
Okay.
So, for example, they may have a 3% rate from the great days of a few years ago. What if you went in and you were able to rent from them and rent to own and actually work out a contract where you build some equity so your rent just doesn't go to the landlord forever. So I share all that as like there's so many strategies that I don't think get to the average person that we need to do a better job of educating them. And so long-winded answer to say have conversations with the people that have actually done it and can advise you versus looking on social media going, well, so-and-so's a big influence and they said not to buy. Like that kind of stuff. It's such garbage and we need to get information. Just like, you know, as I'm preparing for our conversation about, you know, self-doubt and some of the things that you work with, I'm going, well, wouldn't it be better to go to a professional versus just going to ask like my aunt or my friend or someone, you know, I'm really struggling with my self-worth. And I know you've probably never dealt with this, but can you advise me?
Yeah.
Would you do that?
No.
So work with professionals. Right. And guide them through. Let's talk about what you're doing now because you've got your high performance coaching. You told me you actually just brought on one of your best clients recently. And you I hear the word high performance, self-doubt and some of that stuff. Give everybody just kind of like the high level, what it is that you do exactly and who you serve.
Yeah. So high performance to me means people who are willing to do the work. I no disrespect to people that aren't, but to get where I'm at, to get where you're at, it does take a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of commitment. And I think that's like really important, that it doesn't feel like work when you're doing something that you want to be doing. So I'm helping people align their lives with what they actually want from their lives. So I work with high performers, like you said, and I really help them. Like, they're doing everything right. They feel, they're saving money, they're going to work, but they still feel inside like something's wrong. They still feel unfulfilled. And where I specialize, I didn't quite go into my backstory completely, but I specialize in working with people who are held back by traumas that happened in their life and limiting beliefs. I believe we all have some sort of trauma or limiting beliefs, especially around money. A lot of us were raised by parents that were in a different financial situation than what the world is like now. And we were taught to be grateful for what we had. We were taught to not want anything more. And that's nice in theory, but right now, we need to be a lot more strategic, and we need to be a lot more driven if we want to actually be able to buy the home, to invest the money, to retire. Yeah. So I work with people who are driven and who want to be putting the work in, but also want to feel good with what they're doing and create a life that makes sense for them. I think so many of us think that hard, long days are the only way to get to a lot of money, and that's just not true. It's about aligning your gifts, aligning what you do with people who will actually pay for it. And I help people do that. I help them get themselves into the right situations, the right scenarios, that they are valued appropriately. Nobody's like going to come up to you and say like, hey, like, you're doing a great job, I'm going to pay you 3 times what I'm paying you now just because I like you. That doesn't happen. Yeah. You need to strategically get yourself and advocate for yourself in a place where your value is needed and where you have the ability to actually influence your paycheck, where you can actually be in a situation working with customers that you can actually charge what you need to charge to have the life that you want to live, because they appreciate what you're offering. Yeah. So I
love that.
Thank you. It's like, this is my life's work. Like back when I was living in New York, if it's okay if I go into the backstory that happened, please. I started and then we got sidetracked a little bit. But about 8 years ago, I started a business. I started a consulting business in this baby product space. And I'd always been a top performer, as I said, but I'd always had some nice boss ahead of me who was like fighting my fights. And, I was driven by excellence. I upset some people along the way because I always wanted them to perform at a high level. But when I started my consulting business, I was still driven by that excellence. I treated my clients' businesses like they were my own. I did not know how to price my services correctly. And I was working myself absolutely ragged. I was really afraid of like disappointing my clients more than anything. And I think about it now and it's like, I don't think I would have been that worried about disappointing myself. It was about disappointing somebody else and letting them down. And I was just running myself absolutely ragged. I didn't know how to scale my business. And I started to have health problems. I was using marijuana and alcohol and smoking tons of cigarettes to try to cope with it. And that was making me shameful because I knew that I shouldn't be doing those things, but I didn't know any other way. And I started having panic attacks, and I ended up in the hospital twice even, thinking I was dying of a heart attack. It was just like horrible. Wow. And it sent me down a path realizing that I had this childhood trauma that was preventing me from advocating for my worth, which is why I care about this so much. I just had so many limiting beliefs around finances. Like I thought like rich people made $200,000 a year. I had no idea that like the services that I was providing were changing my clients' lives and in turn should be changing mine. So, I spent about 6 years really working with therapists and coaches, and I got really into yoga and Eastern medicine, and learned how to tame my anxiety, learned how to tame my stress, learned how to listen to my needs and advocate for my needs, and in turn advocate for my worth. And I got paid $1 million a year these past few years through my consulting business.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope people hear that.
I never thought this would be possible for myself.
You should be proud of that. That is incredible, because most people, one, don't even go chase their passion. And then what you went through, and Rory shares this quote all the time about you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were, and that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. I mean, I'm proud of myself, but this is really just like, it sent me down a path of like understanding that so few of us, that grew up like I did, like that grew up like, I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I came from a very lower middle class family, and we don't know our worth. We don't know how to advocate for ourselves. And
so true.
Like, I look around and so many people that I know are just like, so unhappy at work. And I see that they're getting paid so little compared to what the market value is. And they just don't believe in themselves. They just don't think there's anything better out there for them. So,
scary.
Yeah.
Let's help some, because you're talking about this stuff. And I wonder, I had some conversations last week I was sharing with you before we rolled. And how could someone identify today if they have a limiting belief, or some of these things that you're seeing people struggle with and you struggle with yourself? Because there was a self-awareness that happened last week that I'm curious if we can help people today of how would they know if they're not completely in tune with it, how would they know they have these?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. I think a lot of it comes from inside. I mean, that something's wrong. Like, Oprah said something that really has just stuck with me for years. I think about it all the time, and it's like, you can't, I hope I get it right. You can't dream things that aren't possible for yourself. Like, if you have a wish out there, like, I'm making this up, but if you want to be a chef and you are just going to bed thinking about this all the time, yet you work in, like you're a mortgage broker or whatever, and you just keep thinking about this dream to be a chef, you're meant to pursue that. Like, I think that's the first place to look. When you have an itch inside you that needs to be scratched and you just can't stop thinking about it, when you feel unsatisfied with where you are. I have a lot of people in my life that are very happy doing support roles. They're not unhappy with that. And we're not all meant to be world changers. We're not all meant to follow our passion to such a high degree. But if you have an itch you can't scratch, and you're not, and you're telling yourself, more importantly, you're having to talk yourself off the ledge and tell yourself, oh no, that's just not meant for me. That's a limiting belief right there. Mm-hmm. Any sort of thing you're having to tell yourself, like if you're having to tell yourself, I'm too old, I'm too slow, I'm not smart enough. Those are all limiting beliefs that need to be challenged if you're up for it, and that's why I work with high performance people, because it takes work, as I'm transitioning from my business in this baby product realm to starting my personal brand to where I'm building a movement here, I have to be very disciplined. I go to bed about 8 o'clock every night. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I have a very busy day. I do go to the gym. I take care of myself. I do yoga. I go for walks with the dog and things like that, which are part of my health routine. Yeah. But it doesn't feel like work, because I've aligned I've aligned how I'm spending my time with how I'm supposed to spend my time. But I spent so much of my life telling myself that I couldn't do this, that there was no value out there for me. And that's so many of us, like, it's more than limiting beliefs. It's just like, we just don't even believe that there's a way. We're raised by people who were so risk adverse and so focused on scarcity that we just don't even realize that there's a possibility to follow our passions or to do something different with our lives. And I think the way to change that is by reading. I mean, I fell into reading about 8-9 years ago, and I just said this recently, but it's like reading opens your mind up. Getting the coaching and the mentorship is what helps you actually execute. Yeah, and apply the information. Yeah. Oh, I shared that with somebody recently too. If they were asking hey, what's some of the strategies to growth? And I said, for me, it's been reading books and it's been travel. When you go to a new place, I'm sure LA,
to New York, or if you travel obviously outside of the country is even better perspective. But I remember a few years ago when we went to Italy, and we had this perspective of how the food was different, how the culture was different, how people interacted was different. And we're like, we want a little piece of that to come back with us and integrate into who we are. And that perspective is forever changed. You can't unsee it. Once you read a book, once you go somewhere and see something, I always say it's part of who you are now. And you can choose to implement more or less of it, but it's who you are. I'm curious, what's your favorite book that you've read of recently, or that's kind of stuck out that you would recommend, maybe within our talk today, or just your favorite?
I have a couple, I have to say. I think since we're in Nashville, I will mention Donald Miller.
Oh, yeah.
I found Storybrand a few months ago, and I loved it. And I read his other one, the 1,000 words in a million year. I'm
more of a Storybrand guy. I haven't read the other one yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of his memoirs. I'm sorry, I'm getting it butchered, but it's one of his memoirs, something about numbers. It was so good. And I just bought another one of his memoirs recently, and I can't tell you the name of it, but I think he's fantastic. I think that, talk about somebody who's completely built like an incredibly expansive life. I heard recently he charges $100,000 a day for consulting. Like, this is the potential of what I'm talking about. Like, people like me grew up thinking that, best I would make is $150,000 a year one day, $200,000 a year. And now I see it. People like me are charging $5,000 an hour for their services. People like me are charging way more than that in some cases, but I don't think Donald Miller is any different than you or I. I think he grew up very, very, very normal. And then you start to match your competencies with people who appreciate them.
Yeah.
And you build off of that. Like, so much of it is just being in the room with people and learning from people. And so Donald Miller, I think, is just fantastic. And I'm just going to mention a book that I picked up. Actually, I went to this bookstore. It's like this used bookstore, which is not my thing. I do not like shopping generally, but this in Ojai, it's about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. I went like a few weeks ago, and I picked up a Donald Miller book, but also it's her name is Dr. Edith Eger. She's like one of the last remaining Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
You know who she is?
I know of her. I've not read the book.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't even heard of her. I've been talking about her nonstop, but I'm reading her memoir, and it's just like, I've never read anything like this. Like, so I wouldn't say that it's not play-by-play of what happened at the concentration camps, but it's 50 pages or so of that, which is plenty.
So memoirs.
It's absolutely incredible, like, that people could have survived that.
Yeah.
And I'm really moved by that book right now. So, again, it's, hearing people's stories, and I think same thing. I think she said that in her village, like 15,000 people were taken and 72 survived. And it's like, I think what I see from that, she tells her story of surviving that. And even when she's like released, it's far from over. She's completely torn to shreds, but that's the power of, like, I don't want to say anything insensitive, because a lot of people had perseverance that didn't survive that, but like, it shows how much perseverance allows us to do things, and we can do the impossible. We can do the impossible. We won't all succeed, but we can try doing the impossible.
That's right.
And take ourselves a lot further than the limitations we set on ourselves.
Well, it all ties back. When you talk about everything that you're talking about with the self-worth and self-doubt and all of these things, like we all have these limiting beliefs at some level or some stage, that if we were to really spend the time quietly, they would say, I never thought I could do that, or that wasn't for me, and all of that. And I think for most people that are probably listening today, they're like, hopefully we've kind of planted a seed or sparked something in them, and they go, there is that thing that I didn't think I could go do. Or I didn't think, when you're talking about these numbers, I always share with people, like, money just exchanges hands when problems get solved, and you help people. And I'm similar to that, where I never thought sometimes people would pay me for certain things that I've done, and the only limit was how much I asked for.
Absolutely.
And I often look back and go, well, if they were willing to do that, and they were willing to do that, like, why shouldn't that just be the number? One of our friends that spoke last week, Chris, talks about that. Is they asked him, how do you come up with what you charge people and all that? And he said, well, it's based on the problem that I solve and everything that I brought in. And if they're willing to pay that, that's the fair price.
I love that. And there are some people that I work with that can't afford my services. And I, truthfully, if I was independently wealthy, I mean, I would love to be just helping people for free all day. I mean, that's the plan, hopefully. But, you know, I mean, there is a level of philanthropy that I think that all of us should be doing and helping people that can't afford our services. But yeah, I mean, it's a problem I'm solving. And if it's a $10 million problem, that person's probably going to need to pay more than the person I'm helping solve a $10,000 problem.
Agreed. Let's talk about what you're doing now and then kind of the near future so people can connect up with you and all this. Because I know you're going to be at Brand Builders the next couple of days. You're making some great connections. And I think, you know, I can see that greatness inside of you. The things you're starting to do and you start connect up with more people, the word gets out there and they find out who you are.
Thank you.
That's like half the battle some days. It's like, oh, here's this guy that actually does what I need.
You know, I'm going to say something about this because I'm just kind of hearing myself and how chill I have become over these past couple of years. And that's really a big testament to like what I help people do. And I mentioned this, I'm going to take this a couple of different directions, but like with Brand Builders, like changing your life, like changing your career, making any sort of big change, it does take time. And at a certain point, I mean, speaking of books, this year at the beginning of the year I read a book that talked about faith, and I've just been really, this was the year that I found faith. I'm not exactly sure what that exactly is for me, but I do believe that there's a higher power. I do believe that you just got to trust, like change, I'm to the point right now, I don't worry about much. I don't. And it's like, I mean, I just hearing myself say that, it's remarkable. I mean, I was somebody that worried all the time. And you just, you know, I'm putting one foot in front of the other. About 4 years ago, I started writing a memoir. Writing a book is a gargantuan task that I have a lot of patience about. So I'm hoping that sometime in the next year or two that is out in the market. I just started my podcast. It launched, we're in the middle of July. So it launched the middle of July.
Yeah.
That was my first project that I've taken on that I can say that I fully enjoyed because I released expectations. I did the best I could do each day. It was a couple of weeks later than I thought it would be, but I'm not curing cancer here. It's a podcast and I did the best I can do. And now once I get it going, I'm committing to doing the weekly releases. Honestly, it'll probably be twice a week because I'm enjoying it so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, like you just getting things going takes time and it takes patience, and rarely do we meet our goals completely. You know, I mean, you set a goal for yourself and you adjust. And I do believe in the level of, I do believe in being consistent. Like now that the podcast is going, I have a routine, I have a strategy. I will keep doing that every week. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. I mean, that's cool. I mean, just you and I talking, and everyone I've talked to that has a podcast has said pretty much the best thing about it is the people that you get to meet by doing so. So I have no idea. I mean, I'm just kind of taking it day by day, but I wouldn't be surprised if I meet people in the next year that I never dreamt would be possible for.
It's unbelievable. I tell you all the time, they're like, tell me about this podcast. They want to start it and all. I go, if I could give you any advice, it's the one, just start it before you're ready, because we all do. And then 2, just be very open to the fact that every guest has something to share and some part of their story that's going to connect. You never know what guest will connect with your audience or you can learn from. And I always think we're over 150, probably nearing 200 here soon.
Congratulations.
How cool is each one of those people has given me a gift of their story and their lessons and their expertise. And so that's uniquely given me perspective that I get to go and be a better version of myself. So you'll experience this gift that I'm excited to see and listen to your show, because I think there need to be more. I was telling you last week, Jamie Kern-Lima was speaking there, and I was like, man, there's so many overlaps with things you're sharing, what she shared, and the impact of people crying in the room and all of this. And I go, that just tells me more people like you are needed.
Thank you.
In the world, right? And so I just share that with you so be bold and go out there and do that stuff, whether it's the podcast, speaking, whatever it is you do, because
thank you.
It was clearly needed.
Thank you. And with that, I'm planning on being on stages soon. I think where I kind of see myself, and this is like a bit of process too. I mean, we all suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, it's taken a long time. My brother actually just texted me today and told me I'm talking about my story. I've made $1 million a year doing he's like, wow, that didn't sound braggadocious at all. You learn that you start to you need to be proud of yourself. And truthfully, I'm not saying this to be proud of myself. I'm saying it because I want people to know it's possible for them too. And also $1 million, and I want to be sensitive, it's not what it used to be either. Like, 20 years ago, you made $1 million, you're set for life. Yeah. It is not the case anymore. And I think we all need to be aware that we need to be advocating for our worth. We need to be making more money because life is getting more and more and more expensive. But I think where I really have the opportunity to help people in a big way, it's that I'm extremely vulnerable. I think, I was raised around a lot of women. I've had a lot of women friends, and I've learned to be comfortable with my feelings, to talk about my feelings. And from a male perspective, I really want to help normalize that it's okay to have, we all have feelings. It's more than okay. We all have feelings, and I want to help normalize that. And kind of like what Jamie Kern-Lima talks about, and I read her book recently, we were talking about this a moment ago, that really helped me amplify my message. When it all comes down to this, it is about worth. It's about worth in your family. I had a lot of stuff happen that wasn't great, and I had to set some boundaries, and I had to learn to prioritize myself because I was dying inside. And that's a big part of what I stand for. There's generational trauma is a real thing. And I look at my family, what's happened in my family is a story of generational trauma. My grandparents did not get help. My parents didn't do the healing that would have helped us be in a better situation. We'll leave it at that. And I'm the one that's really breaking that cycle. And it didn't happen from me. I'm not special by doing that. I didn't do anything special. I just recognized, I just got exposed to stories. I just read enough, and I just heard enough. I talked to people enough. I moved to New York, and I met enough people to say all these people, there's a lot of crazy families. Half of the families are crazy, but half of them aren't. There's a lot of parents that have done the work to be able to support their kids appropriately. And I really, really care about that. And I think that I want to bring awareness to this. I grew up in a home with a lot of love too. And that's what's made this so difficult for me. It's that there was banana bread cooking. The house was super clean. There was fresh daisies planted outside every spring, but there was also a lot of anger and a lot of lost tempers and a lot of things that shouldn't have happened. And I want to help people who are held back by that trauma and their fear of just being honest about the fact that they are hurting inside because of it. That's really where I see my calling in this world. And with that, awesome. Thank you.
Dude, I'm glad. And I think people are going to listen to that. And one, I know I always listen to these and I'm like, that's a special moment that people are going to connect and go, that's me. And I also want to encourage people listening is, why not you? Why not be the one? If you have dealt with that or you're dealing with that today, why can't you be the one? And I know Ed talks about this a lot, and him being the one that broke a lot of those. And it's why can't you be the one? We need more of those today with where the country is and what's happening. Without going on a complete rant, is we need more people just to step up where they are, take their unique gifts and break whatever cycle. And then that creates this community and world that we go,
absolutely,
this is better.
And with that, I talk to my family, we're close-ish, there's boundaries in place that I've had to put in place. And there's, you start to you leading by example changes things,
Absolutely.
There's growth happening. It's not necessarily as fast as would be nice in some areas, but it's all working. Someone has to set the example.
That's right.
And so it's not scary. I've said this about, it is scary a little bit, but I've said this about setting boundaries. Boundaries, it's hard to set them, but there is an immediate payoff to them because you get yourself out of a situation immediately that is not the right situation for you. And your boundaries are your boundaries. If you told me my feet aren't on the chair, but if you were get your feet off the chair, and if I didn't, that's your boundary. You're allowed to have your boundaries.
That's right.
And we are all supposed to be respecting people's boundaries. And so anyways, that's my story. I work one-on-one with people right now, really, helping individually, helping them change their lives, work through these limiting beliefs. These are the people that they're doing everything right, like I said, and they're proving to themselves that they're capable of more, and they dreamt about starting that business. They've dreamt about leaving that corporate job. I'm just starting my surrogacy journey with my partner right now. I never thought this would be possible. I wanted to do it, but I finally took the leap. Sometimes like we just need to be working with someone to help us. To help us with those next steps. And that's what I'm doing right now. And soon I'm going to be starting some mastermind communities, and I really just hope this soars from there.
Sweet, sure. I'm sure it will. We're going to share this with everybody, and this has been awesome. So thank you for making time.
Thank you.
And I know you're going to have a great next 2 days with brand builders because they're always awesome. I'm jealous. We've got some meetings. I will not be at this one, but I will make sure I'm at one of the future ones with you. So thank you for your time. This has been awesome.
I appreciate it.
Guys, it's been another great episode. Man, I love these stories because hopefully as you're listening to this and you share this with your friends, as you recognize some of Matt's stories, some of what he does in the healing and helping other people could be for you or it could be for somebody you love, right? I always say is maybe this message wasn't directly for you, but you know someone in your life. And that's where we do these. And we ask that you share, give this to someone in your life that would find value. And I'd also challenge you too. If you're like, hey, I'm doing well, I'm doing these things. Is there another dream inside of you that you've held back, and maybe these limiting beliefs and self-doubt has held you back from pursuing it? You heard Matt's story. You heard us talk about this, and I believe we're all called for something greater, and our purpose starts to really unveil as we start to take action and move forward. So today, that could be reach out to Matt, follow his content. We'll include the links in there. Reach out to us. We are here for you on anything that you guys need. If the show has meant something to you or something stuck out, let us know. That's how we grow the show and know how we're impacting you. Leave us a comment, reviews, share it with your friends, anybody in your network. We would appreciate it. Until then, go out there and do something great, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.